The Scream Kings are in no way responsible for any encounters with the paranormal, extraterrestrial abductions, eldritch insanity, hauntings, curses, hexes, demonic possessions, cryptozoological sightings, or any loss of sleep that may result from listening to this podcast.
This is the Scream Kings podcast. I'm Max George.
And I'm Nathaniel Darkish.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies, rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats podcasting together, mass hysteria.
Who you gonna call?
The Scream Kings?
The Scream King! I'm so shocked that it's taken us this long, Nathaniel.
Yeah, this movie is just one of the greatest movies.
We were talking a little bit before this, and Ghostbusters means so much, I think, to you as it does to me. It is an iconic piece of film. I don't care who you are. I've never met someone who's been like, ew, Ghostbusters. It just doesn't exist. This movie is perfect.
I have, a little Slimer right next to me on my desk, which actually you gave me.
I am wearing Slimer socks right now.
Heck yeah.
Twinning.
Yeah, and it's such a part of my life that, a few months ago I was at Target and, we were shopping for some kids' clothes for my son, and they had a Ghostbusters hoodie, Bankman jumpsuit hoodie. And, of course, we immediately shelled out $30 that we really probably shouldn't have been spending to buy it, because of course we did.
Really? I think we need to give a disclaimer that this episode is mostly going to be about two boys fangirling about Ghostbusters the entire time. It's just such a wonderful film, and we have so much to say about it, and...
Hashtag sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a little different than what we usually do. We're not going to pick it apart, I think, as much as we do other movies, just because it's such an iconic piece of film, and it really is just so good. It's so good. For me, I tweeted about this a few days ago. It's one of the movies that I watch when I need to feel better. Kind of like comfort food, For me, chili cheese dogs, I don't know. They speak to me. They're comfort food to me. Ghostbusters is one of those movies that I can watch as many times as I want. I never get bored with it, and it just feels good to watch it. And I don't know if that is the nostalgia behind it, growing up watching it as a kid, or how just fun it is. It's just a great comfort movie.
They're armed. They're dangerous.
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
All right, that's bad. Okay. All right, important safety tip. Thanks, Egon.
They're professionals.
Oh, I'm the chairman of the largest paranormal removal company in America.
You see it? They're all that stands between you and the end of the world.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Okay. So, other than just repeating that classic Ray Parker Jr. song, what do you love about Ghostbusters? Why does this movie work so well?
Kind of the main highlight for me about Ghostbusters is the story in and of itself is just incredibly original. I don't think anything before it really came to its story, and I don't think there's much after it that has really been able to mimic it either. The thing that comes to mind is the Nintendo game Luigi's Mansion, where you're Luigi and you suck up ghosts with a vacuum. But it just became such a quintessential ghost movie that I think a lot of directors and a lot of movie producers didn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole because it would be blatant plagiarism. Mm-hmm. The story is just so unique. These scientists getting together and hunting the paranormal ghosts with their crazy machines and their backpacks and their jumpsuits, and it just works so well. There's nothing cheesy or corny about it, even though it's about these kind of four nerds. Well, three nerds, essentially, minus Egon. And this world, it feels so natural. I guess he is a nerd.
Egon's a huge nerd. Winston's the one who's not that much.
Winston's. I'm sorry. I'm thinking your favorite character. I'm reading down the show notes. I apologize.
Like, Winston is more of a, I don't know, just man of action, I think.
Agreed. And so I think the premier aspect of the film is it just fits naturally into our world so well. Even though it was filmed in the 80s, it's still a very relevant film. Mm-hmm. There's no real disconnect. It creates this whole new mythos that you want to believe is actually happening. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. I think what really works about it is that blend of a lot of humor and kind of the inherently ridiculous elements of it. And the fact that, like, they don't shy away from that. Like, but it works for the film because, you know, inherently the idea of hunting ghosts for a living is ridiculous. And the idea is kind of inherent in a lot of, like, mythology and all that it kind of plays with is also, like, when you really spell it out, inherently ridiculous. And so they let it be ridiculous, and then it all comes together in this beautifully, just so fun and funny and fresh, and like it all comes together because they let it be silly, but the stakes are still there.
Well, and I think what it does as well, Nathaniel, is a lot of movies nowadays, and I think the 80s did a really good job at this, is they created movies not to make money per se. Of course they were designed to make money. That's obvious. Mm-hmm. But Ghostbusters and Beetlejuice and E.T. and a lot of these classics, you know, my comfort movies, they're just fun. Like, there's not this level of satire or metaphor or anything like that. They're just good quality movies that are having a good time, and it makes you feel that. It resonates with people because sometimes I think we forget that cinema, a big part of it is just recreation. Turn your brain off and enjoy something on your TV, and I think Ghostbusters does that far better than a lot of other movies.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, part of what comes through is that the cast had a blast making this movie. Like, this wasn't just some, serious art project. It was a fun project where they all had their own personal stakes in it. You know, we have two of the main actors are the writers of the film, Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, and then we have, but everyone's having a good time. Every single scene has at least a few improv lines in it. Like, everyone's given a lot of room to be creative and funny and just have fun with it. And that comes across because, I think films where the actors are miserable or, they're having a really hard time, it just doesn't have the same sort of feel to it. Take The Shining, for example. The Shining is a very impressive technical feat, but the actors were just treated like garbage by Stanley Kubrick, and were forced to do scenes over and over and over again 1,000 times. Like, that's not a fun movie, and it doesn't have that energy that inherently comes with a movie like Ghostbusters, where everyone, probably left the set every day just laughing and having a good time.
You can feel that energy from the actors as they're doing their job. It's incredibly moving in a way, now that we're talking about it, that movies carry that energy, and sometimes you can feel the stress that the actors are under, and other times, like Ghostbusters, you are just having a good time with them. Mm-hmm. So, also the cast is phenomenal. The cast is so good. Sigourney Weaver, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Rick Moranis. They're some of my heroes from my childhood.
But yeah, not just them. We also have Harold Ramis, who is perfect as Egon. We have Annie Poots as Janine. She is so funny. She is such an underappreciated character.
Agreed.
Like Walter Peck is such a good villain character. Like, he's just so smug, you want to punch him. Ernie Hudson's so good as Winston, and is honestly, I think, underutilized in the film. But yeah, like everyone, like every person is just so dropped into their roles. And especially, like, I love, like, I feel like we should definitely highlight Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis in that they are, characters who, you get a very strong feel for them at first. Sigourney Weaver's kind of this cool, erudite woman who then, when she's possessed, is like very animalistic, and the of course the famous, there is no Dana, only Zool. But when she has Zool inside her, it's very different, and you can see just this big change in the character. And then Rick Moranis going from this like very dweeby neighbor to this also like weirdly animalistic guy, but like you see like parts of his personality come through still, but just like very like curious like dog character, and it's so fun to see those changes.
Well, and I think Rick kind of represents the dog of Zool, and then you have Sigourney, who's more like a wolf. Same canine family, but very different. And both of them do it so well. Sigourney is just a goddess, and Rick Moranis is too pure for this world. I love him.
Yeah, can we just take a moment to appreciate how amazing Rick Moranis is in every way?
Rick, if you're ever listening to this episode, we love you.
Yeah, because Rick Moranis, not only is he a wonderful actor who is in some of my favorite movies like this and Little Shop of Horrors, he also just is an impressive like figure in terms of like he left acting, something he loved, when his wife died, so he could like take care of his kids. And
yeah, Rick Moranis, you're awesome. Way to go. I would hang out and go to your party in Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So I don't only think that the characters are fun. Bill Murray, who is just iconic in this show.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Aykroyd, who's a beefcake. I had sexual stirrings occur as I was rewatching this because he's a good looker. Hasn't aged well. Sorry, Dan. But back in the day, you were a delight.
So I guess, is he a bigger beefcake in this or in Blues Brothers?
I can't comment to that because my soul is torn between two things.
Either way, two amazing movies.
Agreed. So you have these iconic main characters, you have an iconic supporting cast, and then the creators also made such a fun and diverse set of ghosts. You have Slimer, and you have Gozen, and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, like all
and
of
the
these...
library ghost, and
just so fun. It's just so fun that all of these different ghosts have unique personalities and they interact with the world in very different ways. Slimer and all of his garbage. It's just phenomenal.
You slimed me, Ray.
Oh, yes, please. Slimer, I mean, is my favorite ghost, hands down.
I'm curious, does that come from this movie, or does it come from, like, the cartoons?
Probably a little bit of both. I honestly forgot about the cartoons, but now that you brought that up, I'm, like, having nostalgic flashbacks all of a sudden.
Yeah, and so I guess, we would have grown up with the new Ghostbusters cartoon, which is, like, a different, like, the next generation being trained by Egon, but Slimer is, like, their pet companion kind of thing. And I think he kind of fills a similar role in the older cartoons as well, but I haven't watched those. Yet.
Okay, so we've ranted about the cast, we've ranted about the supporting cast, and rant is not the right word. We've praised. The ghosts are phenomenal. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is forever changed. I can't eat marshmallows the same way without thinking about Ghostbusters. What else, Nathaniel?
I just love the practical effects in the movie. Like, the ghosts are, obviously a big part of that, but it looks so good. And even, like, the streams of energy that's coming out of their proton packs looks so good. Just because it has such, like, an iconic look. Everything has a cool, like, style to it, that is both, like, very practical and also just, like, very unique. But yeah, like the technical effects look great. Like, they really did a good job of, the puppetry for Slimer and the ghosts that, like they did a good job of making them seem transparent. Gozer looks really creepy when she's, in her, like, weird spiky-haired woman form, and then, just, like, everything, like, looks very good. It really drops you into the world, And I love that, that these actors had something tangible to act with.
I think I called her Gozen earlier, and I apologize, Gozer, the Gozerian. Please don't hurt me.
Ha! Yeah, we don't need to piss off any more demons, please.
And I think what happened there is what we talked a little bit about earlier, is that the film felt so effortless in its execution, like you thought that this was real life, and the special effects added to that in such a way that it even enhanced that relatability. The proton pumps weren't these packs, weren't these crazy, Star Wars lightsaber laser beam things. They looked like vacuums and giant camping backpacks. But then at the same time, the streams that were shot out were very futuristic, but it didn't feel disjointed in any way. It wasn't contrived. It was great. And then you add a flavor of humor to that, and don't let your streams intertwine. Don't let your streams touch. It's just fun.
Agreed. And I like that also really had an interesting blend of mythologies that it's pulling from. We have ancient Babylonian or whatever it was for Gozer. We have, modern ghosts. We have just such a big variety. And you mentioned that before, but I like that it had a clear idea of what the threat is and how that threat interacts with this version of New York. And also that one of the biggest villains in the film is just, the EPA. They just want to make sure that everything's okay. That
the EPA. It just makes me laugh.
Well, yeah, and I love that, the guy, he's such a bureaucratic jerk, but he's also, not really wrong. They do have, a nuclear something or other in New York City, and, that's not safe. And so,
I just love that the only, government organization that came was the EPA.
Yeah.
It just makes me laugh, and it's that element of humor and the movie not taking itself so serious that really allows it to connect with a wide audience.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that I'm seeing that you mentioned is just that it's not a scary film, and that's definitely true. This is definitely comedy first, adventure, then far down the line horror. But there are definitely things that definitely spooked me as a kid. And it's fun to see how it's I think a really good introduction for younger audiences to kind of get used to some of the trappings of horror movies in a more safe, controlled environment.
I definitely would still consider it a quote unquote horror movie.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. We've talked a lot about on the podcast about gateway horror movies, Conjurings and the Annabelle movies that are very intense and very scary and really kind of a stepping point into the darker realm of horror. Ghostbusters, though, is exactly what you said, Nathaniel. It's a way to kind of help a younger generation kind of desensitize, it feels weird to say that, into the horror genre. It's a very funny, exciting, more action-adventure movie with these horror themes intertwined with it that can be scary, but also are very fun. You have a library ghost, which scared me as a kid, counterposed against Slimer and the Marshmallow Man, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And so the dichotomy keeps you entertained. You're scared a little bit, but then there's also these really funny moments. So maybe the scary ghosts aren't really that scary.
Yeah, well, and I think the Library Ghost is a perfect example because one, just really great cold open for a movie.
Oh yeah, you don't know what you're getting into when you have the library cold open.
Yeah.
It seems like a whole nother movie at that point.
Yeah, but then I love that, when they interact with her, what does she do? She turns around and she shushes them. So that's, fantastic. And then when they don't shut up, she gets super mad and, kind of turns into a scary-looking ghost. But then what is their reaction? It isn't, hey, let's fight this, or even, kind of a more typical horror movie, just, sitting in terror. They just turn and run, go, ah! That is such a fun way to react, where it's just it's kind of, it feels a little silly, But yeah, like, it's not that their entire universe is wrecked. They're actually excited, but a little freaked out. What was the scariest part to you as a kid? Was it the library ghost?
I think it was the library ghost and the gatekeeper and the keymaster, Rick Moranis and Sigourney Weaver's dog creature. I was very terrified as dogs as a kid.
Okay.
I was outside one day and our neighbors had this big husky and he came over as I was playing outside and like jumped on me and started licking my face. At the time, I thought he was a werewolf and he was eating my face and I was going to die. And that kind of imprinted on me. And so as a kid growing up watching these hellhounds with their creepy red eyes and the one in Rick Moranis' bed, that really got to me quite a bit. And again, it was a mixture of practical and special effects that worked so well. But yeah, so the hellhounds and then definitely the library ghost at the beginning. How about you?
For me, it was just a simple little, like, 1 second ghost. And this probably boils down to how I was scarred when I was like 8 years old by the first Resident Evil game. So like zombies and things like zombies really got under my skin back
Is
then.
it the taxi?
Yeah. It's so yeah. When all the ghosts get unleashed, there's one that like flies into a tailpipe, and then like you see someone getting into a taxi, and then it turns around and it's this like zombie looking dude almost like it has like possessed him or something, and just that little teeny moment just gave me nightmares, which is a shame because like I love the movie, but like that part I like whenever I would watch it I would like have to turn away.
I love it.
Yeah, I was a sheltered child.
Oh, that's okay. So was I.
We've talked about this in the episode 1.
We have. So again, this episode is more just kind of fangirling and praising this movie for all of its incredible accolades. There are a few things that we think may have been a little bit better. They're very minor. I know one of yours that you mentioned a little bit earlier was Winston. Talk to us about that.
I just wish that Winston were a bigger character. I feel like he's really underutilized in the film. He comes in really late in the game. He doesn't, like, I don't know, they just don't really give him enough screen time when he is part of the team. He's just kind of a fourth man for some reason. I don't know, it just felt like it was kind of tacked on. He definitely comes into play a lot more in the second film, but it just I feel like he's an interesting character. Like you get a little bit that he has like a military background, and so I just feel like he brings something to the team dynamic that is definitely present in the scenes that he's there, but I just think they could have fleshed it out a little bit more. Like it just felt like, and I'm sure this wasn't their intention, but he almost feels like a token black character, and that's not great. And so I think just utilizing him more would have made it so it seemed less that way.
For me, towards the middle of the movie, there's a montage about kind of what the Ghostbusters are doing and their fame that is increasing. That was fun, and I think it really helped the plot and kind of transitioned from Act 1 to Act 2. But I really wanted them to show more moments of them actually encountering the ghosts one-on-one. I feel like, while the montage was fun, it really took away from them growing together as a team and capturing these ghosts and seeing all the technology. I wanted a little bit more of that. And as a kid, I think I remembered more, and then watching it again as an adult, it's kind of like, oh yeah, really? They have Slimer, they have the library ghost, and they have Gozer, and that's about it.
Yeah, that really is. Which is, again, kind of a shame because, like, Winston comes in, like, middle of the montage.
Right.
So he's really only present for the last act. And like, it would have been fun to see a little bit more of, like, how swamped they are that they need a fourth guy, and then, like, what he's contributing. And, even, like, I think even just, like, one more scene of, like, hey, here's, like, teaching the new guy how to do the stuff.
Yeah, a ghost hunt with Winston, at least. Let's move into Crowns and Screams, because that's all we can say that is bad about the film, and I wouldn't even say bad.
Yeah, just room for a slight amount of improvement.
I gave it a 9. A 9. I don't know if I've ever given a movie 9 other than Hereditary.
We've given a couple, but yeah, I definitely give it a solid 9 for Crowns as well. It's a near perfect movie. Like, part of me just wants to give it a 10, but part of me knows that it maybe doesn't quite deserve it, but it's really freaking close. I love this movie. I will watch this movie forever.
Once you give a movie a 10, you can never take it back.
That's true.
As far as screams go, I gave it a 3, only because those few ghost moments really kind of did creep me out as a kid. As an adult, it's not scary at all. Absolutely not scary.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 2, based, like with you, just based solely on how it affected me as a kid. If you had asked me when I was a child, I would have given it like a 9. Just from that 1 second clip.
I'm going to just find that, make a GIF, and send it to you over and over and over and over. Who's your favorite Ghostbuster?
Best Ghostbuster is clearly Egon, because Egon is the inventor.
Makes sense.
He's just like, I don't know, yeah, I always loved Egon because he is this like big nerd. I mean, like, they're all nerds in different ways. I liked that he was a very, he was inventing stuff. He was a very techie kind of guy. And I also liked, I don't know, I was always very entertained by how Janine, is always, trying to hit on him and stuff, and he is just oblivious.
And I actually see quite a bit of you in Egon. I think both of our favorite Ghostbusters actually mimic our personalities very substantially. My favorite's Raymond Stantz. 1, because Dan Aykroyd is beefcake back in the day. Mm-hmm. But 2, I loved how he was kind of the comedic relief of the team. He was very, very nerdy, but also pretty sociable and outgoing and just kind of quirky and almost dumb in a sense, but like a fun dumb. If that makes sense. Not stupid, but just
kind of like socially oblivious at times.
Yeah, and I see a lot of myself in that. I am a nerd, I'm quirky, I'm sociable, but sometimes in conversations I can be a little stupid. So...
Yeah, well, and also Stantz is the one who is kind of the expert on these ancient religions and ancient mythologies and all that stuff.
As well. So I think you and I just found who we need to dress up for Comic-Con this fall because we kind of nailed it on the head. If I had to take one of the 4 Ghostbusters and pick one for you, it would be Egon, 110%.
Yeah, I'm definitely not Venkman because he is just this competent, obnoxious flirt who...
He's too cool for school, is what he is.
Or he thinks he's too cool for school. And sometimes that works for him.
My other favorite Ghostbuster is Rick Moranis, because, as we've said, he is the chosen one. The savior to save us all from sin.
Well, he is the Keymaster.
He is. All right, let's talk about some spin-offs of the Ghostbuster series. And this is where I'm going to get stoned, so that's fun. But let's let you talk about the second movie that I've actually not seen, sadly.
Okay, so you're going to have a couple things spoiled just by my very brief discussion. I'm not going to get too in detail into it. I will say that, number 2 just really doesn't hold up nearly to the caliber of film that the first one is. The first one is just so good, and the second one just didn't quite live up to that. I can't figure out why it didn't work as well. It's the same writers, it's the same director, same cast. It's just not as strong of a film. It's basically the idea is that they find this big river of ectoplasm, and there's this evil portrait ghost that's trying to steal a baby, and that's all I'm gonna really say. It's trying to steal Sigourney Weaver's baby, or sorry, Dana's baby. But yeah, it just isn't as funny. I think it's trying harder to be funny, but it just didn't quite deliver the same way. I don't know. The villain just wasn't as interesting or fun because it's a creepy dude in a portrait who looks like an angry German man and not, some giant marshmallow man who's stomping across New York. So do you want to talk about why you think that the reboot isn't as bad as everyone says, even though you're wrong?
Yeah, I debated even talking about this on the podcast because this movie is one of nerddom's most hated movies of all time. However, there are a few Twitter followers that agree with me, so thank you, those who agreed with me.
Thank you, 3 people who are wrong on the internet.
Okay, shush it. Remake came out. It's an all-female cast, which is cool, great, all for that. Kate McKinnon is one of my all-time favorite female actresses. I understand why people hate this movie. I really do. I don't think it deserves the amount of hate that it gets. I think it parallels a lot of what The Last Jedi gets, which I also quite enjoy.
Hey, don't compare The Last Jedi to this hot garbage.
I'm not comparing the two. I'm comparing the hate of the fandom. You know, so many people just detest Last Jedi for a lot of silly reasons in my mind.
Yep.
And I get those reasons. I understand them. I think they're a little silly, but I think that this movie warrants the same reaction from people, and I'm not 100% sure why. And you mentioned that a lot of the good parts of this reboot are mimicking what was done in the original, which I agree with 110%.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I wasn't taking it so seriously the first time I saw it, and so I just kind of enjoyed it for what it was. It's not the original. It's not as rewatchable as the original, but I had fun. It was harmless. I didn't personally feel offended that they made it. Chris Hemsworth is a beefcake in it, so I don't know. It's not perfect. It's not great. I understand why people don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the hate needs to calm down a little bit. It's a fun, fine movie that is probably going to help a new generation fall in love with Ghostbusters. And if anything, people will see this movie and watch the original, and then they'll realize that the original is 10 times better.
You want me to tell you why you're wrong?
Please do, Nathaniel. I live every day to hear it.
So outside of Kate McKinnon, I feel like the cast was not great.
I agree and disagree. I think Kate McKinnon did a really good job, and I think
Kristen Wiig?
Yes, I really enjoyed her character as well. Mostly because she was awkward and uncomfortable, and that's how I live my life.
Okay. I just feel like, for the most part, the characters were, like, way more cartoony.
Agreed. 100% agreed. Like, our token black character in this reboot was definitely 110% a token black character.
And yeah, like, just things like that bothered me, because it felt like it was a bad fan parody of it, where people decided, hey, let's not, like, write characters that actually are, like, three-dimensional. Let's write two-dimensional, ridiculous characters because we think that that's what is funny. And that's not funny to me. That's just bad writing. I actually feel like you're wrong about it, bringing more people to the series. I feel like it was, I don't know, I just thought it was bad in a way that it probably had some people who checked it out and they're like, oh, Ghostbusters is a stupid thing, and then didn't watch the original. I think it drove probably more people away than actually gathered in. Just kind of my guess of how people are responding to it. And I feel like really, yeah, like you said, anything that worked in the movie was just nostalgia. It wasn't that it brought anything new or fresh or interesting to the table. It just brought nods to the original where you're like, oh yeah, I remember when the first one was really good right then. And that's not the same as you liking this movie. It's just you liking the original and it saying, hey, remember how you liked the original part of this? So, I don't know. It just, to me, it doesn't work. And inherently, and I want to, and I'm going to try to explain myself in a way that doesn't make, that makes it clear what I'm saying here.
I know what's coming.
Inherently, I have a problem with an all-female version of a movie. What I'm saying is not that I have a problem with female actresses, female filmmakers, female female-studded casts. My problem is with the idea of taking something and then having to make the girl version. Because to me that says that to me that's pandering, and Taylor, my wife, has brought this up as a point too, is that she doesn't like this idea because to her, Ghostbusters is Ghostbusters, and she as a woman can appreciate the movie regardless of that. And so making the all-female version basically just as a statement of hey, we can do it with girls too, says to her, she says that's just pandering. She's like, I know that women can do it. They could have played those roles in the first place. That's fine. But we don't need to make the girl version, and then yell girl power. No, just make good characters, like make a good story that isn't like, all of these, because they were all basically the female versions of those original characters. No, just make new characters that are unique and different. I don't know. It just, they had to like fill these specific tropes that were in the first one.
I think that's a very good point about this movie, because I agree. I do think it's kind of pandering. And I think the reboot Ghostbusters does that more than a lot maybe of other movies.
Yeah. Yeah, like to me, it's just, whenever any movie, and this goes, if you take a movie that is made that has like an all-female cast, and then later on, if you remade it with an all-male cast to, mix it up or whatever, inherently, I just think that's a broken premise. Like, I need something more fresh than simply you gender flipping a bunch of characters.
Okay, I would agree with a lot of that. And again, I don't think this movie is perfect by any means.
Yeah.
And I think you raise some very valid points. I do think it is pandering, and it's one of the movies that it's very blatant pandering. Mm-hmm. Because you are correct, and it's essentially a mimicry of the original characters, but let's gender flip it, and it serves no purpose to the plot.
And in fact, like along those lines, let's launch into the comics. And I'm going to bring up something from actually like midway through the run of the comics. And this is the more recent comics. I believe it's by Boom. Oh, no, sorry, it's IDW. So it is the IDW more recent run of comics. It started probably about back in 2010-ish. Maybe a little bit earlier than that. But yeah, so they've had a run of Ghostbuster comics that continue the story like shortly after 2. And the first thing I'm going to bring up, because it kind of relates to the point I was making about the reboot, is that partway through the comics, or I guess throughout the comics, they kind of introduce more and more female characters just throughout the cast. Like, for example, Stance buys a like rare bookshop, and so he has an employee there who like helps with a lot of the research and stuff that they do that relates to like how they're fighting these ghosts and stuff, and she's really cool. And then, of course, like Janine actually like sometimes starts being involved in some of the Ghostbuster work off and on, just when like things are really crazy. And so there's a point in the comics in which all of the main Ghostbusters have like been captured by a ghost, and so they need to be saved. And so the like main female cast of characters, so like Janine and the assistant in the bookstore, and then a couple other characters, they don the suits and save the guys. And that worked for me because they were their own characters. They were unique and interesting, and they brought elements to the story that really worked, and they did things in their own unique ways. So I really liked that little arc of the comics, because it was fun seeing these characters that were already part of the universe have either received training or kind of have to learn really quick relative to this situation, instead of just making basically the girl Egon and the girl Stance and the girl Venkman and the girl Winston. So that was the kind of what I'm getting at, is that like to me that works better. So the comics, kind of just speaking about them generally, I actually really like them. I feel like they do a good job of capturing the tone of the characters. They kind of they're fun because they take the opportunity to kind of like expand the world in some interesting ways. They the Ghostbusters get hired outside of New York a few times and kind of go to other areas in America. They start to see that the paranormal activity from stuff that was really centered in New York has started to spread out more. And it's just like it's becoming more and more commonplace all over the world, really. And so, there's even like instances where they're contacted by other people who are like, hey, like, we want to like make a Ghostbusters franchise store and stuff like that. Like, we want to be able to also kind of use your brand to do the same thing and use your technology, and it just kind of builds on that world. And also like they regularly have to work with the EPA now as sort of getting contracts through them as opposed to working against them. So that's kind of interesting too. Like you see really the whole universe of characters pulled in, but it just kind of expands on what we have. And again, like, you know, we also have like the bookstore and these, you know, characters that are, you know, doing research, and, you know, just it builds on the universe in a really fun way. And so definitely, if you're a comic fan and you're a Ghostbusters fan, I think it's definitely worth checking out. I haven't read tons and tons of them. I've probably read like 5 graphic novels worth, so probably like 30 issues of the comics, and I like them. They're fun. I like them a lot.
I have a comic store just down my house. I'm going to have to look and see if these are there. That sounds amazing.
I got most of them actually just through like virtual library stuff, like through Libby, that app. So, you know, just check it out. It's, I think, worth everybody's time if you are a fan of Ghostbusters.
Let's cut the crap and talk about how excited we are for Afterlife.
That looks so good. I was very worried because...
Same. Very much the same.
Because, you know, we just had the hot mess that we just talked about that came out. And I was like, oh, I don't want more Ghostbusters movies. Like, let's leave this alone. But then they showed me a trailer that has little girl who is Egon's granddaughter. And I was all in. And then, of course, then they're like, oh, by the way, and, like, everyone from the original cast is going to be in it. I was like, yep. I think they've confirmed everybody except Rick Moranis, and I'm hoping...
Oh, I so hope. If he's in it, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, even if he's in it for, like, a second, like, who cares? I'm happy. Yeah, I'm excited. Like, it looks like a really good blend of, you know, the things that I love about Ghostbusters, but in a very new story, a new context. And, yeah, just, like, the new cast members are actors that, you know, the ones that I've seen in stuff I really like. You know, like Finn Wolfhard and...
Yes, and he, I think, is a phenomenal actor, so I think he's a great pick. Good things are coming, I think, in this movie.
And can we just say, screw you, coronavirus, for delaying it a year?
Let's not talk about it, because it gets me too sad.
Is March 5th of 2021.
2021.
But, I mean... I'll take waiting a little bit longer if I can see it on the big screen and get that full experience, because it's going to be amazing. Also, were you aware that they're so just changing gears, and, you know, now that we basically just said, hey, we can't freaking wait for this movie, were you aware that there's also like a video game that is a sequel?
No. What?
Probably like, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, they released a Ghostbusters video game. I have not played it. I've heard it's actually pretty good. I own it, I think, on Steam. I just haven't played it yet. But it's supposed to be basically what Ghostbusters 3 would have been if they had made it. So definitely, like, they involved I think they got all of the original cast for voice acting for it, and they, yeah, definitely involved, like, some plot ideas and stuff that they had kicked around back in the day. I think especially Harold Ramis was involved in making the game, so...
Do we want to move on to kind of the last segment, which is 24 fun facts you never knew about Ghostbusters?
Okay, so I assume you're getting this from, like, BuzzFeed or something?
I may or may not be, but that's fine.
Well, we should just give credit where it's due.
Thank you.
Thanks, BuzzFeed, or whatever.
BuzzFeed is great. I love BuzzFeed. Don't believe everything you read on BuzzFeed, but it's great. Both Chevy Chase and Michael Keaton turned down the role of Peter Venkman.
Ha!
Eddie Murphy and John Candy both turned down main roles as well. Bill Murray's role was originally written for John Belushi, but he died while the script was being written. Sadness. And Dan Aykroyd referred to Slimer as the ghost of John Belushi. Dan
That's
Aykroyd's
hilarious.
script originally took place in the future, but Harold Ramis rewrote it to take place in modern times. Thankfully, I think that was a good decision.
Yep.
The original Ghostbusters trailer featured a 1-800 number, not a 555 number, and if you called it, you would hear a pre-recording of Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. Where is that number? I need it. I'm lonely. Give me Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd.
Especially Dan Aykroyd, it sounds like.
Shush. The Ghostbusters Firehouse headquarters was remodeled as the mechanic shop in The Mask.
Oh.
The marshmallow goo that explodes onto William Atherton is actually 50 pounds of shaving cream.
Yes, I think it was shaving cream for him, and then it was whipped cream for pretty much most of the others.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man suit cost $20,000. Ray Parker Jr.'s theme song for the movie was a #1 hit for 3 weeks. The jail scene was filmed in a real prison, and Dan Aykroyd was convinced the building was actually haunted. Bill Murray only agreed to star in Ghostbusters because they offered to remake The Razor's Edge with him as the star. He sounds like a diva.
But we still love him anyway.
The party scene with Rick Moranis and his guest is almost entirely improvised, which is amazing. Ghostbusters was the highest grossing comedy of all time until the release of... Do you want to guess? It's going to piss you off.
It better not be the new Ghostbusters, or I'll be very angry.
Home Alone.
Oh.
The term proton pack was never used in the first Ghostbusters. The term came in Ghostbusters 2. The guns for the proton packs were originally wands. Oh, that's amazing. Expecto Patronum!
Expecto Ghostum!
The film was originally entitled Ghost Smashers. I love that. Ghostbusters was Larry King's film debut. Ron Jeremy was an extra in the film who later starred in a porn parody entitled This Ain't Ghostbusters XXX.
Very original name there.
The cast and crew referred to Slimer as Onion Head because of how bad the prop began to smell after all of the food that went in and out.
Gross.
To show its massive size, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was originally supposed to come out of the water next to the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, that probably would have added to the budget a little bit.
There was a second version of the librarian puppet, but it was rejected because it looked too disgusting. It was later used in Fright Night, which was released 1 year after Ghostbusters.
That's fun.
The demonic voice of Dana/Zool was performed by director Ivan Reitman, and most of Bill Murray's lines were ad-libs.
Yep.
The end. There's your listicle from BuzzFeed.
Yeah, those are fun facts. I'm just going to share one other thing that I just found fun. So, I'm a big fan of the Borderlands game series, and in Borderlands 3, which is, the newest entry in the series, there is a mission in which you have to go and trap these... They're basically ghosts. They're these, weird alien spirity things. Anyway, you're handed a ghost trap that looks exactly like the ghost trap from Ghostbusters to go capture them. And then when you complete the mission, you are rewarded with a gun called the E-Gon that shoots out basically a beam of energy like the proton packs. It's phenomenal.
Love it. All right. Nathaniel, how you staying spooky?
Lately, I've been staying spooky mostly via podcast. I've been listening to a couple podcasts that that are new horror-related podcasts. So the first one I'm going to mention is the Scaredy Cats Horror Show, which is made by the guys who do Reply All for Gimlet. Basically, one of them is super terrified of all horror movies, and so the other one is subjecting him to horror movies, trying to slowly get him ready so he can, watch more intense horror movies and actually maybe enjoy them. It's a lot of fun to listen to because, just you get kind of the total horror wimps perspective on everything. So that one's just a lot of fun. They definitely are very skilled podcasters, and so that one's just a lot of fun all around. I also want to mention Grady Hendrix has started a podcast that kind of is a way in which he is both sort of shamelessly plugging his new book that we have already mentioned on the podcast, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which is so good. And also just kind of it's a way for him to dump out all of the research that he did for writing that book. The podcast is called The Super Scary Haunted Homeschool. And the first episode basically was covering a lot of geography, or basically vampire geography, kind of hitting on what different vampire legends are in different parts of the world. And it was funny, it was entertaining. Grady just is a really funny guy. So definitely check that out. It's a lot of fun. How about you, Max?
I just binge watched 10 episodes of the first season of Fox's show, The Exorcist.
You know what you're supposed to do after you binge watch something is then you purge watch, which is basically watching the Purge TV series.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
Ha!
So I have mixed feelings about this show. It was really, really, really good until
It wasn't?
the, I think, 5th episode where you find out the main character is actually Reagan from the real Exorcist, and she's changed her name and has a family, and it just kind of felt hokey. Like they were relying too much on the, like, wow factor that all of this is Pazuzu and really Reagan, and even Chris comes back from the original show. Like, it was fun, but it also felt like they were really reaching for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, that's not great.
My favorite parts about it, though, is that the church, the Catholic Church, has been infiltrated by integrated demons, and an integrated demon is essentially a true possession. One, there's no such thing as integration when it comes to demonic possession. I have the Roman Rite. I can read it for us if you'd like.
We'll save that for a relevant episode.
Yes, we should do the taking of Emily Rose, or possession of Emily Rose.
We will very soon.
So it's cool because the church is infiltrated by these demons, and they're very highfalutin demons, and they're kind of creating these machinations, however you want to say it, behind the scenes. So that's kind of a subplot to Pazuzu possessing Reagan's daughter and trying to get revenge against Reagan for betraying him. And it was fun. There were a lot of nostalgic moments from The Exorcist, especially the music. But just the moment, there's one scene where Chris, Reagan's mom, comes back, and it is like the opening scene of The Exorcist. And you're just like, okay, I'm just going to watch The Exorcist now. I don't know, it lost some of the fun. However, it's a very solid demon TV series. There's not a lot of demonic TV shows. And I was surprised with Fox, kind of the liberties they took with some of the special effects that they did with the demons. It was very gory, very gnarly, and really very cruel what they did with Reagan's daughter and kind of how they showed her becoming possessed by Pazuzu. Also, the biggest disappointment was when you actually meet Pazuzu the demon, his face is nothing like the original Exorcist. They completely change it, and I was frustrated. Sounds like I hated the show. I binged it in a week. I did not hate it. It just kind of got corny, like Fox shows do sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a second season, and it actually got like a 9.8 on the tomato meter from Rotten Tomatoes.
Holy cow.
I know. So I think I'm going to keep watching the second season. It's kind of an anthology series, so it's the two main exorcists from season 1, but then they go and find another girl who's possessed. So we'll see how it goes. It was canceled for a third season, so regardless of the tomato score, it probably isn't very popular. So I would say that is how I've been staying spooky. That and just a bunch of horror movies. I watched I Trapped the Devil again.
Sweet.
And it's fantastic.
I've been watching some horror movies lately. I just watched a really crappy horror movie.
Sometimes the crappy movies are the best.
Not in this case. This one was the sequel to Hell House LLC, and it kind of sucked.
I also watched Friend Request that you and I had chatted about. That's another fun one on Netflix. It's one of the better social media horror movies out there. It's not great by any means.
It's not great, but it's way better than it has any right to be.
Agreed. It's pretty funny. So,
All right.
And then I'm continue reading Grady Hendrix's book about vampires and book clubs. It's going much slower than I anticipated, but I'm trudging along.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to read The Stranger Beside Me, the Anne Rule book about Ted Bundy, so...
Ooh.
Her friend, Ted Bundy.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Go watch Ghostbusters, whichever one you want, but make it the original.
Because that is, in fact, the one that you want, because you're a reasonable person who's listening to our show.
And stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
Need even more Scream Kings? Here's our obligatory shameless social media plug. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at ScreamKingsPod. You could also email us at screamkingspodcast@gmail.com. Help us reach a wider audience of horror fans by leaving a review on iTunes or by sharing a link on social media. You can also support the show by going to patreon.com/ScreamKings. Stay spooky.